Hello Game fans, pirates, zombies, deck builders, fish and more await in this edition of surprise releases, so let's begin with Roboquest Cross Dead Cells. A little bit of an unexpected update, since Dead Cells also released its last update ever, so it will be interesting to see if they work with any other studios in a similar fashion in the future. This roguelite first-person shooter is one of the most underrated titles since it is excellent, but people don't seem to be talking about it, where this update adds the Collector NPC straight out of Dead Cells, which is a new system that allows you to tweak the chances of a weapon appearing during a run, along with a new weapon and the red scarf from the Beheaded, so get this game if you have not. Rum Gun is a pirate-themed Diablo-style action RPG releasing out of early access after 4 years. You are doing Diablo stuff but with pirates, using period-appropriate weapons like cutlasses and cannonballs to take out your enemies. There's also magic, naval combat, legendary beasts to hunt down, gambling and more, and apparently is the work of a solo developer and is very affordable at just $5, so if you love ARPGs, I'm sure that this will get its hooks into you. The developers who made Kerbal Space Program has had quite the interesting history in game development, since following the success of the original and the acquisition of the studio by Take-Two, some of the original team members left to start Floating Origins Interactive, with the subsequent way that Take-Two handled Kerbal Space Program 2 not being great in my opinion. But anyway, this 3-person team made KitHack Model Club, which also released out of early access. Similarly, this is a physics sandbox simulation title, but not where you are building rocket ships, but rather remote-controlled vehicles, which includes cars, boats, planes and more. So if you love tinkering with these, but want a more wallet-friendly option, this is the game to get. There isn't a specific trailer for Eyes of War, the character update, but this medieval real-time strategy game from 2023 was introduced to me and I thought that it had promise, so here it is. This update increased the visual clarity and distinction between your own units and those of the enemies, which is pretty critical for a game like this, and coincidentally, they just released the Civilization Ascension update as well, which differentiates between the 4 civilizations even more and is still a hidden gem. I do have a soft spot for the idle/incremental genre as well, with a neat one of these with new ideas being Nodebuster. This seems to have some Vampire Survivors inspiration due to the swarms of enemies, but is not exactly a roguelite, with the Path of Exile style skill tree being rather extensive with fun upgrades. So if you love watching numbers go up, this is your game. We don't get that many new racing games anymore for good reasons, since you can only see so many anti-gravity races and then kind of realize that they're all very similar, which makes Phantom Spark somewhat of an oddity, a sleek looking one of these with an almost ethereal quality to the game, especially in terms of level and ship design. Time trial mode is the default, so you're trying to beat your own time, with ghosts of other players giving you some clues on what to do, and most interestingly, due to the focus, this is suited for single player, which I guess explains its modest success. Another 1.0 release of interest is Odd Realm, a game that appeals to me due to the ultra-minimalist pixel art and in some ways resembles games like Dwarf Fortress or RimWorld, but in a mystical fantasy realm. You are leading your colony and aiding them in their survival with an impressive number of playable races, procedural generation of the world for infinite replayability, weather, research trees, and so much more. It is a pretty dense one of these with plenty of systems and so much content, so if you love the genre, this is one of interest. I let out a little sigh when the developer of Amata reached out to me, since I previously featured their game in my summer showcase, but then they went ahead with a surprise release of their game, i.e. not changing the release date in advance before the game was scheduled to come out, which meant that it didn't show up on the list of new releases, which limited potential coverage opportunities. Still, this is a pixel art action RPG platformer having little bits of Metroidvania in this, but curiously, the tough precision platforming challenges are the highlight instead. While it is an early access release, the full campaign is available and playable, with this early access launch meant largely to gather player feedback, which again isn't a strategy that I would go with, but if you want to help an indie dev out, do pick up this title. The city builder title SteamWorld Build continues to chug along with a free update named Skull Valley. This is a Pharaoh or Impressions style city builder title, but with the SteamWorld IP adding a new piratey map with matching buildings, music, decorations, and treasures. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, but the important thing about HELLCARD Bruja the Blood Witch is that it adds a new playable character class in the Blood Witch, one that uses the life force and strength from enemies against them, but at the cost of her own life force, being a familiar kind of system in fantasy RPGs, but is new to this roguelite deck builder. This DLC has over 106 new cards and 9 new class-specific artifacts, along with non-gameplay items like outfits and emotes, where the estimated sales figures for this game continues to look good, so check it out if you have not. A surprise release that I missed is Galaxy Burger, in which you are making burgers for cats, having to cook the meat, prepare the fries, drinks and more in order to satisfy the customer. While it looks relatively simple, there is an inherent appeal to this game similar to that of Cook Serve Delicious, and adding to that 7-player multiplayer support, and I can see why this has taken off. There's an almost zen-like meditative quality to this game, as you just focus on completing one order after the next with a relaxing, endless mode with no timer if you just want to zone out. One of the standout releases from this year so far is Spirit City Lo-Fi Sessions, a cozy productivity tool that you are supposed to put on while you work on something else, having its share of lo-fi beats, built-in productivity tools like a task manager and Pomodoro timer, as well as in-game collectibles, releasing update 1.4 which adds more room layouts, new spirits, items, a preview mode when purchasing decorations and much more. So if you have found such productivity games to be useful, please leave a comment below and let me know how you are using it. A new paid DLC to the roguelite deck builder Indies Lies from 2023 is Desires Flowing, one that substantially expands upon the game in the addition of a new Puppeteer class which allows you to control dead spirits, having 3 new characters in this class, a new followers system in conjunction with Puppeteer mechanics, 100 plus new cards, 13 new monsters, new events, adventure stories, lore, and more, making this even better. I was kind of surprised by the release of this game since I got an email from out of nowhere that Divide by Sheep 2 is now available on Steam. Of note, because I played the original Divide by Sheep from 2015, which is a math puzzle game where you move groups of sheep from one island to the next in order to get the correct number. This is the definition of cartoon violence since sheep can and will get eaten or sliced up, hence the whole divide thing, with the original being a decent one of these. I'm not sure about this trailer though, which sounds like Japanese to me. But then you look at the names of the developer and it just leaves me with questions, and the surprise announcement/release doesn't seem to have helped it with a whopping 5 Steam reviews as of recording, but for the nostalgia, it's good to see something from this developer. Another surprise release of interest is Flood Core, a puzzle exploration game in which you explore the remnants of an ancient civilization in a flooded world. As far as I can tell, there's no combat in this game, and it's a pure puzzle title with the main mechanic of being able to swap positions with a specific object in the world. The best part is that this is free, being a short 15 to 30 minute experience, and it's the work of 5 French students as a graduation project, so go support the next generation of game developers by checking this out.
No one saw the infection coming. The few who survived were forced into hiding. But now, it's time to fight back.
I know. Before you run away, yes, Terminus Zombie Survivors is another zombie-themed title, something that has already been done to death, but yet, the 1.0 release of this turn-based roguelike is of note, almost doubling the number of Steam reviews, and probably copies sold since it fully launched. For one, the turn-based nature of this game is different as compared to something like Project Zomboid, where you're doing zombie survival stuff like scavenging for resources, crafting tools and weapons, and of course, fighting the undead if the need arises. Your goal? Reaching the Terminus safe zone and escaping, but there are alternate endings, like finding a vaccine as well. There are multiple character classes to choose from, like police officer, farmer, firefighter, and more, and with 15 of them and procedural generation of the world, results in plenty of replayability. I like my weird, quirky games, and one such title is Fish Like, a micro-game collection in which you participate in a variety of activities involving fish. It might seem like it's just fishing or rowing a boat, or feeding a fish in an aquarium, but then things get weird since there are over 120 micro-games after all, so I deem WarioWare but Fish worthy of your consideration. Another action-adventure RPG chugging along in early access is Ellerlof Champions of the Four Kingdoms, where the developer has been pretty consistent with patches and updates for the game while in early access, most recently releasing Forge Masters, one that overhauls the crafting system of the game. That is in service of allowing players more options and freedom to explore, being able to get certain drops from monsters to craft better equipment so that you can adventure in new areas, with the addition of new gear sets and a refinement of the in-game economy as well. Publisher York's Cast Game has had quite the run as of late, with another one of their releases of interest being Tales and Tactics, which also released out of early access. This is a roguelite auto-battler title, taking the army upgrading and party composition of games like Auto Chess, but in the grander context of a replayable campaign due to procedural generation. You are using tanks, healers, DPS and more, and can give them equipment to tweak their role, using the right combination of units to most effectively defeat your opponent. If you do fail a run, you do unlock new units, items, perks and more, so there's always something new to check out in this game. Okay, big caveat here, since we also have the 1.0 release of Depersonalization, a game that is, for all intents and purposes, a digital tabletop RPG, so think Dungeons and Dragons, where characters have their own character sheet, stats, skills and more, with turn-based RPG-style combat as well, or with a Lovecraftian theme and enemy goals. But the English translation isn't the greatest, even in its 1.0 form. However, there is something interesting going on here with the number of copies it has sold and its popularity, and in a similar way to Library of Ruina or Limbus Company from Korean developer Project Moon, it is going under the radar in the mainstream, so if you want to be early to a cool, weird thing, give this a look. I remember covering the early access launch of Knock on the Coffin Lid way back when, and it is finally out of early access, which, if you cannot tell from the music in this trailer, is a Slavic mythology themed title. You are investigating your own death, trying to find a way to break out of a time loop, having 3 main characters with intertwining stories to explore. Like Terminus Zombie Survivors mentioned earlier, this has almost doubled its Steam reviews due to the full launch, with the gimmick of world-altering decisions that you can make, such as whether or not the goblins remain enslaved, or if you were to wipe out elves from the face of the earth, with comparisons being made to Slay the Spire, and is one of the better one of these to come along in recent memory. Okay, this next title is not an indie game, but I do have to give Castlevania Dominus Collection a mention, since if you love Metroidvanias, or more specifically, the Castlevania style of game, this is one to pick up, both for nostalgia reasons if you played these originally, or even as a new experience, since it is conveniently packaged up nicely on Steam. This comprises of Dawn of Sorrow, Portrait of Ruin, and Order of Ecclesia, which were Nintendo DS titles, along with Haunted Castle Revisited, which is a redesign of the Castlevania arcade game. This is the third Castlevania collection on Steam, and curiously, Symphony of the Night is not in any one of them, but they seem to be selling well and might just pave the way for a new Castlevania game. A no-brainer pick if you love roguelites is Peglin, the pachinko roguelite that is fairly unique, with maybe 2 or 3 other titles doing the same thing, but this is by far the most successful one of these and released out of early access. Honestly, the 1.0 launch wasn't a huge thing, since the game, even before the official change in the number, was already excellent, so this was more incremental than anything, adding the final levels of the Crucible, which completes the base experience. Mixing pachinko with a turn-based RPG is genius, and they have rightfully reaped the rewards, and they're still planning to release free updates down the line, and is the definition of the indie dev success story. Watch this video for a look back at the roguelites of 2023.